David Sirota recently wrote this great piece about the public education system and how some politicians and some corporations are really fighting hard to make sure that they can switch public schools to charter schools. Now, charter schools are not private schools. They're still publicly funded. However, they do not have union representation, and they don't abide by the same rules that certain public schools do. Now, there are companies like Amazon and Microsoft that are really funding this push toward charter schools. And a lot of times when the media talks about this, they make it seem as though these corporations are doing it because they really want education reform. They really care about the children.
What about children?
But as David Sirota points out perfectly, of course, it's all about the money. Now, companies like Amazon and Microsoft have tablets that they want to sell to these school districts, to these charter schools.
Of course. Oh, it turns out they have a profit motive. Wow, I didn't see that coming.
Huge profit motive. So some might argue, well, can't public schools sign contracts with these corporations and, do the same thing? No, there are certain rules that prevent public schools from signing contracts with Microsoft or Amazon. But with charter schools, as I mentioned, they don't necessarily have to abide by those same rules. So these corporations are hoping that they can cash out big time by getting these charter schools to sign these contracts. And by the way, some might argue, well, technology is good. It's going to improve the education of these young people, but not so fast. Studies indicate that a lot of these charter schools, on average, do not perform better than our public schools do.
So I was really surprised by that, because I had always assumed that the charter schools were going to do better, honestly. And part of the reason is because I believe in competition, and I believe that in diversity. So if you have a bunch of different schools trying different ways, I thought that the cream would rise to the top and you'd see what works and what doesn't. And that on average the charter schools would do better than the public schools. Now I was proven wrong. That's not what happened. But this story begins to explain part of the reason why. Because there's a reason why there's some of the rules, not all of the rules, but some of the rules in the public schools. Now when you take away those rules, what winds up happening in the charter schools? Well, these corporations come in, they go buy this, buy that, buy this, buy that, forget the rules, gimme, 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 and it turns out the charter schools wind up being totally inefficient.
Yes, in fact, the administrative costs are extremely high, relatively speaking, in charter schools. So that's really a big problem, and David Sirota points to that perfectly. But of course, Rupert Murdoch is also getting in on the action, which I thought was really interesting. So let me read you a small part of David Sirota's piece. He says, the Los Angeles Times reported that News America Inc. donated $250,000 to the reform slate. That's the same News America that is the for-profit education technology arm of Rupert Murdoch's News Corp. It's the same News America that was recently trumpeted by the New York Times for rolling out an expensive tablet that will be targeted at middle school children. That is, if the company can convince the school board candidates that it underwrites to divert money away from hiring teachers and into News America's coffers.
Look, if you allow public corporations unlimited reign in all of our affairs, what will they do? They will twist the rules to their advantage. Why? Because they have to. Their charter is make every single red cent you can. Okay, that is your only obligation. And if a CEO doesn't do that, he will be removed and they will have a new one. That is why we need the government to look out for its citizens, to represent its citizens, and to put a check on corporations, knowing that that is the nature of corporations, saying, hey, wait a minute, I'm going to protect the citizens so we can get a balance here. Not that you shouldn't have corporations, but that we need a balance. But that balance has been taken away because the corporations also figured out, hey, you know how I can make the most money? If I capture the government. And so how do you capture the government? You set up a system where the politicians absolutely depend on you to get reelected. As we told you, I believe, yesterday on the show, the average winning race in the Senate spent $10.5 million. Now, how's an average guy going to get $10.5 million? Okay?
This is democracy, right?
Yeah, they're not going to get 10.5 million. The only way you could win that Senate race is if you play ball with these guys. This is how you play ball, and this is how we destroy our system of government, our schools, and everything else involved. So we got to fix the system, otherwise we're screwed.